So chaps, I'm MagicalMike, and while I could speculate for an extended period on the upcoming feature pack, I'm going to try and condense the info instead. So after the conclusion to the living story, ANET are taking some time out from content releases to bring us a big set of quality of life changes to the game. And while we can argue that some of these things should have been in the game since launch, etc, etc, they weren't, so that's why we're getting them now. And yes, some people will say that the hype is really not deserved, but I'm still relatively excited to see how a lot of these things these changes turn out. I'll leave the most important things to me until the last part of this video, and I'll start with the runes and sigils. A lot of these changes in the pack are geared towards new players, which is always a questionable thing to me. I always have to wonder, why now, of all times? However, I can still see the reasonings behind the decisions being made, and can't really argue too much against them. So rune set bonuses are being buffed. They're trying to encourage us to use a full set of 6 runes of the same type to make them clear, to make the roles that these give us clearer and more defined. So now we might find that a particular set of 6 runes might be better overall, rather than taking 3 sets of 2 boon duration runes, for example. This also means that in PvP you can only equip a full set of 6 runes. The simplification here is a double-edged sword, I know. It's nice to make things simpler for people, but it also loses that tiny bit of extra depth in build crafting that a lot of people enjoy. They're also giving us more rune sets in PvP as well, so we'll be seeing things like perplexity in structured PvP. I'm sure some people will be very, very happy about that. Runes that have a chance on hit to cause an effect are getting that chance increased across the board, so now we'll see those effects happen more reliably, rather than having extreme RNG attached to them, and I can't complain about that because the less RNG we have, the better. Sigils are being simplified to have none of that hidden weird stuff going on with their proc chances, and them causing cooldowns on other sigils and weird stuff like that. So now, that sigil of energy proc won't interfere with that sigil of battle on your other weapon. Good stuff. Don't have another weapon? Well, don't worry, two-handers are getting 2 sigil slots, finally. But stacking sigils like Bloodlust and Perception will be removed from your buff list if you take off the weapon with that sigil slotted. For me that's okay, because I'm lazy and I never have a second weapon to swap to anyway, but for a lot of people this isn't really going to change all that much. On-hit sigils like the Sigil of Air are getting their requirement to crit removed. This brings them more into use with builds that can't crit, which is nice. So the Sigil of Water, for example, that heals on crit is going to be more useful in a healing power build that has no precision. That's about it for runes and sigils. There's also some balance changes coming from this particular blog post, but I'm not going to get into that because I'm in no position to really judge them yet. Maybe when I get a chance to mess with these things, I'll talk about it some more. Crit damage is finally being changed to ferocity, along with some UI changes to make it make more sense and things like that. It's going to bring the overall damage of Berserker stats down, but it's not going to change the meta any, because Berserker is still going to be the most damage you're going to get out of power builds. The LFG system is getting some additions to make it more robust, and the guild windows are finally getting the ability to show us when people were last online. Praise Bear, it's about time. The post that talks about these changes is overall a bit wishy-washy, but all the links to this stuff is going to be in the description to this video if you want to read it anyway. Armor repair costs are being removed. You don't want a worldly world because you don't want to die and repair a bunch of armor? No problem, you don't have to. Trait resets are also being made completely free, and you can reset them anywhere in the world. I am hugely excited for this, because it opens up a lot of cool stuff if you like swapping builds and weapons and all sorts a lot. I'll certainly be using all of my weapons on my warrior, all of the time soon. I can't wait to be able to just swap between a hammer build to a greatsword build, and just do crazy stuff all the time. It's gonna be a lot of fun. World experience, all ascended gear, and legendaries are all being made account bound. A lot of the complaints about the game being not alt friendly are being addressed in that single sentence. Well done. You could argue that it gives a lot of people less goals to work for, but it won't stop me from getting several sets of ascended gear, so that I won't have to swap them between characters constantly. It's definitely a good change, and I welcome being able to try out my legendaries in particular on other characters, and I'm sure a lot of other people will too. And yes, there is that certain complaint that people have, people just going to have tons and tons of legendaries all over the place. But to be honest, the game's already like that anyway, so I'm not going to notice a big change. Dies are also being made account bound. There's really nothing to complain about this either. It's going to be pretty good to have access to Celestial and Abyss dies on all of my characters now. Being able to make an ult and just being able to make it look good from level 1 is going to be quite freeing. The only downside to this is that unidentified dies will no longer drop. You'll be able to get them from other means, which is a small shame because I kinda liked that tiny little gamble I used to do, but I'm not going to miss it all that much. One of the biggest features in the pack is the wardrobe. Any skins that we have now will be unlocked in the new UI panel, and we'll be able to swap our looks whenever we like, at the cost of transmutation charges. It's basically the same system that we already have, but it's incredibly streamlined and it'll be much more fun. It's kind of a huge deal and a huge topic to cover, so really that's all I'll really say about it, and I'll link the dev blog post about it in the description of this video, and you can find much more details about it there. But I'm really happy overall with how it looks like. It also means that any skins we collected in PvP, in that PvP locker, will be available across PvE game types as well, which is pretty good for those people that got cool skins from tournaments and high ranking chests. And it means that you won't have to do a RAR in PvE all that much anymore if you don't want to. Good, I really approve. Speaking of PvP, reward tracks are a new way to earn specific things while playing structured. I haven't looked into it all that much, so the details are a bit foggy, but the sound of that alone is quite promising. I liked getting reward chests from tournaments, but I totally suck and I often lose, so if I can earn stuff from just doing hot joins and being casual, then that's going to be great for me, and presumably everyone else as well. You'll also be able to earn legendary components and living story stuff too if you don't want to do the PvE stuff. And I welcome these changes. If I don't want to do the PvE stuff for that particular living story, then I don't have to. I can go do PvP if I want to, and it means that I'll be able to get dungeon rewards from PvP as well, more reliably than just gambling on tournament reward chests and things like that. Really good. Approve of this change. Traits Unleashed. So the biggest two things for me are the new traits and the Megaserver plan, but let's talk traits for now. They're adding 40 new Grandmaster traits to the game, which vary from sounding really interesting and quite fun to sounding incredibly boring. Unholy Sanctuary for the Necro and Power Block for the Mesmer both sound really curious to me, and I'll be interested to see what kind of builds come from those. Whereas Force of Will for the Guardian and Read the Wind for the Ranger both sound like the least creative traits in the world. I think traits that give flat benefits are really kind of boring, and a few of these so-called Grandmaster traits are really uninspired. But we'll see how they turn out, and if they actually come up with some interesting builds to use these traits in. We'll have to see when they come out. However, the way we're going to be able to unlock new traits seems quite fun in comparison to these rather drab looking things. It's reminiscent of Guild Wars 1's system of unlocking elite skills. We're going to have to go out into the world and do various things to unlock different traits, like certain champions, certain parts of the world you're going to have to visit, bits of Worldly World, dungeons, all sorts of stuff. You can also just buy them from trainers, but I like the idea of having new incentive to go out and explore the maps again. I'll certainly be leveling a Mesmer under the new systems to test them out, and I reckon there's going to be a lot to talk about if they make every single trait require mutually exclusive objectives to unlock. And I hope that we don't unlock a bunch of profession stuff at the exact same place. For example, I don't just want to have to go to the same champion on a Mesmer to unlock a trait and then go to that same champion on my warrior to unlock a different trait. I want them to be all spread out and be all different. Hopefully they are. We'll just have to see about that. They're also condensing trait points too, and how often you'll get them, and all sorts of different things. The whole system's getting revamped, and to be honest, I could sit here and talk about the traits for another 5 minutes, but I'm not going to. Would you like to know more? There's a link in the description. Finally, the Megaserver system. In PvE, the plan is to merge all of the current servers into one smart Mega server, they call it. The idea being that it selects who you want to play with in an intuitive way, instead of just having the current system of guesting and things like that. It'll put you in maps where your friends are, or your guild, or where the most people are, or where people from your home server are. Things like that, basically. It's hopefully going to have clever ways of detecting the best place to put you at any given time. The plan here is to make the world feel more alive with players again. A bit like Launch 2.0, instead of arbitrarily spreading everyone out into their home servers. It's an interesting idea, and I'm hopeful that it does what they intend. I definitely want to see more players when I'm out in the world, because right now, there's no one really leveling in certain areas, and they're just dead. If you go to Queensdale or Frostguard Sound, you're bound to find players, but if you go to somewhere like Brisbane Wildlands, Iron Marches, even Gandara Fields, you're not going to find people actually playing the game. It's not fun. The world doesn't feel the same as it used to. And hopefully the Megaserver system will fix that feeling. There's also implications on world bosses and other things like that, and ore nodes and all the APIs that people use to check up on all this sort of stuff, which are minor causes for concern. But hopefully the systems that they put in place will work out and everyone will adapt quickly. More details on this sort of stuff is in the description of this video if you want to read up on it. So there we have it. There's a lot of changes, seemingly all for the best. I'm sure that there's bits and pieces to nitpick about, but overall, I'm happy with what we've been promised here, and that's something quite impressive. I'm not usually very happy about changes like this. And yeah, well done ArenaNet. If this all goes to plan, then I'm going to be a very happy chappy. Ideally it will go out all bug free, and we'll be very pleased with the result. I've been MagicalMike, this has been a lot of condensed information, and I will see you guys next time.